I'm Mayor of Washington, D.C., and I'm calling to order this meeting of the new Columbia Statehood Commission. I would like to recognize that we have a quorum of members present. Chairman Phil Mendelson will not join us tonight. I am going to kick the meeting off and then turn it over to Senator Strauss, who will make a presentation about the purpose of today's meeting. The new Columbia Statehood Commission was established by the council, I believe, in 2014 to be co-chaired by the mayor, the council chairman, and the shadow delegation. The purpose of the commission is to make sure that we are efficiently pursuing becoming the 51st state of the union. And so it has been my pleasure since I have been mayor to serve with Chairman Mendelson and the delegation to work on those issues. Most recently, the commission approved a plan that would put the question of statehood on the ballot for November. And that is what the point of the commission's meetings have been since that day. You have received, I believe, a packet that talks about the commission and the working groups that the commission approved to get the question on the ballot. And so Paul will go over a few of those steps today. And the reason that you are here is because you have indicated that you wanted to serve on one of those working groups. And so we will talk some about those working groups, and hopefully all the questions about the expectations of service in the working groups will be answered. Last week, the commission approved the release of a public draft of the new Columbia Statehood Constitution for public comment, and the commission also approved a constitutional convention being held in the middle of June. So we are going to work on those things as we move forward. So I hope that you have been heartened, like I have been, by the response from DC residents about our status as a district and not as the 51st state. What do you think? Yeah. Okay, good. I hope you also recognize that people have been galvanized by the argument that we have to kind of switch the starting point, and we're grateful to the Congresswoman who's also been very supportive of this effort for repeatedly, year after year, submitting a plan, a piece of legislation for admittance as the 51st state to the Congress. But now we've kind of shifted the conversation so that the district will prepare and be ready for a new package that says, yes, we want statehood, yes, here's our new constitution, these are our boundaries, and the people of the District of Columbia have said this is what we want. And we would have that package ready to present to a new Congress and a new president beginning in January. We've also gone another step, and we are very pleased that somebody who could be in the White House has said, when a really full-throated endorsement of this initiative in statehood for Washington, D.C. yesterday, which was really, really big. So we want to thank Secretary for that. You will hear some discussion as we move forward also about how the issue will be raised at all, for both parties. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This issue in advancing statehood is going to take all Americans, Democrats and Republicans, Americans in Washington, D.C., and Americans in all 50 states. So it's very, very serious business that we're talking about. So I'm very grateful to you for being here, and I'm asking you, are you going to be willing to go to distance? Who's willing? Gotta go to distance. So that means in organizing and spreading the word and getting more people out for these working groups, and also being willing to make sure we're educating people about the process to even get on the ballot, which is where we are right now. How can we help and how can we make sure we get on the ballot? And so it's going to take a lot of public education to get there. And so if there was any doubt that we have to move with a lot of speed and be thorough and be convincing. There should be no doubt after today's hearing at the Congress. And this is what I think. I think that there's some Congress people that are a little scared that we might be right. They're a little fearful of the momentum that DC residents can generate because we're morally right and we're right according to the principles of our democracy. So they're a little scared. So the things that they haven't been able to achieve in the legal system, they will resort to being bullies and use their political might to get what they want. But we're used to that, right? So that's nothing new. But what it should demonstrate is we and I've always been a person who supports incremental steps to getting there. But with every incremental step, we're going to get a big fight to bullies who will want to be right. They can't get the answer they want from the courts. They will always be able to use their political might to get what they want. So we shouldn't be surprised by that. But we will fight, and I'm very, very proud of the work that Phil Mendelsohn did with the pro bono help that the council and the mayor had, that I had when we moved forward with budget autonomy. And we can't stop fighting now, but it demonstrates how important this fight is for statehood. So I wanted to put that on the table to make sure that we know what we're talking about when we talk about this pathway. And I think that what Paul is going to also talk about is how, while we're working thoroughly, but with deliberate speed to get a constitution approved, send those materials to the council that this commission would approve, send it to the council so that the council can then pass a piece of legislation that puts it on the ballot and sends it to the Board of Elections in July. So that's where we are. I want to thank you for all of your interest. I want to thank you in advance for the hard work that you're going to do, and I look forward to seeing you out in the community talking about becoming the 51st state. Thank you, everybody. So let me first turn to Senator Brown. I'll wrap up with you, Senator. Senator Brown and then Representative Garcia for opening statement, and then I'll turn to Senator Strauss to deliver our presentation today. But let me, Senator, if I could stop you 1 second. We're also joined by our at-large council member, Anita Bonds. So let's hear it for Anita Bonds. And I know she's on the convention committee, and so we want to thank her for her support. Senator.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me start out by recognizing some of the people that work hard behind the scenes for us. Karen Zolgut, Theodora Brown, Rachel Bernard, all on our staff, and Lisa Femia, who was our statehood intern in Denver at the convention and is now a graduate of Princeton University, which only proves that all good things start with statehood. So we welcome Lisa tonight. I want to start out by saying I think this is a fabulous idea. I've been working on this for almost 10 years now, and I've never seen so much enthusiasm in the movement as I've seen since the mayor has come up with this idea, and I commend her for it. And I think we have to work hard to make it happen. It's a very compressed timeline, so we're going to need the help of everybody in the room. And I would like to make a suggestion, Madam Mayor. I know this is not the appropriate time to make a motion, but I think that we should add a working group on the Constitution. Many people are concerned about the Constitution, and I know that Senator Strauss is also concerned about the truncated timetable and would like to expand it a little. But I think that I've been to 3 meetings on the Constitution with activists so far. There's another one planned for next week, and I think we ought to make one of the working groups on the Constitution so that we can iron out some of the feelings that people have about making the process as inclusive as possible and not trying to jam it into a couple of days. As the mayor mentioned, we're at a hearing today where these guys attack budget autonomy, and budget autonomy is small peanuts compared to statehood. Statehood is the whole enchilada. It's budget autonomy, it's senators, it's a representative with a vote, and we need to all be together, moving in the same direction when this referendum gets on the ballot. So I want to say thank you for coming. I hope you're involved as you can be in this, because this is a real chance for us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very happy to see a lot of people tonight. And so I recognize a lot of faces here, but then also there's some new faces. And so this is good. You all are the champions for our movement and to bring democracy to the nation's capital. So we should all be happy that we're here. Hopefully we'll grow the size of this crowd here very, very large, and we'll make this a very, very good process that we can use for the convention, and also when the new administration comes in, and we'll see DC statehood achieved. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, Senator Strauss, I think you have the presentation slides, and you're prepared to deliver them.
I do, and I look forward to getting to that. I know we had a few items. I guess there was some minutes and one or two other things. I don't know to what extent we were going to go through that before we got to the presentation. They were circulated. I know we want to keep up with our housekeeping, so.
Let me just, what calendar, there's a calendar item here that says review calendar. Are we talking about the statehood plan calendar?
That would be the
Okay.
stated plan. One of the issues that has come up and people have raised concern is that our constitutional convention is set to begin on a Friday evening and end on a Saturday morning. And I know that there are members of various faiths for whom they would find that a conflict. I've begun to hear from some of them, and I want to make sure that this constitutional convention is as inclusive as possible. So I would urge, I know it's tough to juggle all of these issues with these many dates, but I'm hoping we can find a way, instead of opening on a Friday night, maybe to expand the time that we're having Saturday and go later, so that observant people can, who are either Jewish or Seventh-day Adventists, could participate as well, and possibly look at some other days. I don't know that I agree with Senator Brown that we need a separate working group on the Constitution, because the convention really will be that working group open to everybody. But we want to make sure that we're not, by calendar, excluding anybody. So
Okay.
I
I'm
hope,
happy to. Now, as you know, we don't have any any voting items on the agenda presently, and we certainly, if you want to submit, why don't we check the times and see if that is an idea that we can do. So your suggestion is no Friday and all day Saturday.
it's something that the people who've been doing caucuses and others who have run into these issues where you want a public event on a Saturday, you would just extend the hours beyond a period of time, and you could expand participation. So I hope that will work. If not, we could maybe look at moving the time on Friday to either earlier. But I know we want to be as inclusive as possible when we're in this convention, so that really every citizen could participate.
Okay. All right. Is there any, that's the calendar item that's here, and I think we issued this packet, so you have a list, I think, on page 11 of proposed dates that have been approved by the commission, and that will be publicized by the commission. We also have a period for comment and a time to introduce the members.
Do we want to do that after the presentation?
Why don't we do the public comment after the presentation? So we'll turn to that, and I will be leaving the delegation to conduct the slides and the remainder of the agenda. And when I leave, that's when the quorum also dissipates. And so this becomes an informational part of our meeting. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Everybody.
Thank you very much. As you probably gleaned by now, the commission members, most of whom are here tonight, are composed of our chair, Mayor Bowser, our co-chair, the chairman of the council, Phil Mendelson. I'm Senator Paul Strauss. You've heard from Senator Michael Brown and Representative Garcia. As the mayor said, this commission was established to coordinate statehood activities, and we have been meeting every week since the mayor announced this bold initiative on Emancipation Day to help bring this ambitious plan to reality. We have met and prepared a draft constitution, which has been released. The plan is essentially to follow the Tennessee plan that was also replicated by several other states and present a petition to Congress. We know we're going to have a new president. We're expecting to have a fair number of new senators, and we're optimistic that there will be many, many new members of the House of Representatives as well. That Constitution was released on May 6th. I think we have copies here tonight if you haven't gotten one, but more importantly, if you feel like saving some trees, they are available for download on our website, statehood.dc.gov. Let's talk briefly about the Constitution, which was something that we did have and create back in 1982. Voters ratified it, and it had a lot of wonderful, great, very progressive and democratic ideas. What it did not have was the force of law, because Congress never granted our petition for statehood, and those aspirational goals remained merely goals. In an attempt to enhance our statehood efforts, the Council of the District of Columbia in 1987 addressed what were seen as some structural problems and perceptual problems with that Constitution. But even that 1987 Constitution for the state of New Columbia was never ratified by the DC voters. In order to become a state, we need a governing document that will replace our home rule charter, which is not a constitution. It is a delegation of authority from the Congress to a government that is not a state. And so in order to create our Constitution, we have been guided by a team of legal and constitutional experts. This revised Constitution was designed to propose an initial draft for discussion by all of the members. And one of the underlying goals of this Constitution is to make the transition from District of Columbia to State of New Columbia as smooth as possible. That's why we have these booklets for you. As I said before, it is online, and you also don't need to wait for any of these meetings. You can go online and begin immediately reviewing comments and submitting them electronically. And of course, this Constitution leads up to the vote on the November ballot. You will be asked as a voter to respond to a 4-part question. First, do you want to become the 51st state? Second, are you voting to ratify this revised state constitution? Third, you will need to approve the boundaries of the new state. And fourth, all of us will need to commit to a representative form of government. Sometimes in history, this has been called a Republican form of government, but we use the term Republican with a small r, meaning that we, as any state joining the Union, must commit to representative democracy as our form of government. A new state, for example, would not be permitted to join the Union and set up a hereditary monarchy or a military dictatorship as their form of government. And certainly we in the District of Columbia, who have been struggling for full democracy, are wholeheartedly enthusiastic about not just committing to representative form of government, but realizing it for ourselves. Of course, when we vote, that will be an important step in the process and a very meaningful one. But under our Constitution, only the legislative branch of government, only the Congress, can confer statehood. The Commission's efforts is to give Congress a complete petition for statehood and remove any of the arguments against it. Now, we know that there may be some political arguments against it made by people who have not always been supporters of our free and equal rights. But one of the things we need to do with this initiative is take away any of the structural arguments, that we're not ready to be a state, that we don't have the governing structures in place. And that's the beauty of the Tennessee plan, and that's why it's worked in the past. A territory wishing to become a state adopts their constitution, they set up and prepare their transition plan, they file a petition, they have all of the documents ready so that there's no longer any structural argument or barrier towards statehood. Where we are in the process. We have adopted a timeline that is designed to engage residents in every ward of our community. We have approved a plan, we have released the draft constitution, and tonight we are going to kick off 5 working groups that will help the commission throughout this process. And we're hoping that before you leave here tonight, every one of you will be engaged in at least one, if not more, of these working groups. We understand that they involve an aggressive timeline, but it's time that we get aggressive about the representation that we have that is long overdue. What are these current working groups? One is called All 8 Wards, and another is All Americans for DC Statehood. The other is the Advocacy Group, a special group designed to deal with communications and recognizing the unique national forums that our 2 nominating party conventions will have, one in Cleveland and the other in Philadelphia. We have a special working group designed to target our activities at both those conventions. Let's talk about the All 8 Wards Committee. You guessed it. It is to provide district-wide grassroots outreach effort, public education, and volunteer recruitment in all of our 8 wards. We want to recruit community members to attend roundtables and get as many folks out to our constitutional convention as possible. The All 8 Wards Committee will be responsible for community outreach, engagement, and education. Our next group is to recruit advocates from outside the District of Columbia. We want to find leaders in every state who support statehood and are going to help us create a national grassroots effort. Once we have those groups up and running in every state, we're going to work with members of Congress from around the country to amplify our statehood effort. And let me just say that this effort has already begun. We have had some exciting results. First, with our group Iowans for DC Statehood, a group of Iowa activists that use the caucus process on a bipartisan level to raise the issue of DC statehood. And DC statehood resolution planks have made it from the caucus precinct level, where they were voted out. They went to the county convention level in Iowa. From there, they made it to the 4 district conventions in Iowa, and we expect at the time of their national state convention that the Iowa, at least one political party in Iowa, will have DC statehood as part of their official state party platform. In neighboring Nevada, that had the first in the West Caucus, again, DC statehood resolutions were introduced at the precinct level, passed at the county convention level. In fact, 2 counties in Iowa, in Nevada, both Washoe and Lyon County, passed DC statehood platform resolutions at their county convention level. And I'm excited to hear that the draft state platform for the state of Nevada will also include a DC statehood plank when that convention convenes this Saturday in the great state of Nevada. And so other notable efforts include Hawaii, where a Senate resolution has passed the Senate and is awaiting passage by the Hawaii House of Representatives. But we don't want to start there. We need to stop there. We need a 50-state strategy, and we are looking to use all of your connections with your friends in the other 50 states to help create Americans for DC statehood chapters in all 50 states. The advocacy community is targeted to engage specifically, but not limited to, the business community in an effort to identify leverage and direct resources that will enhance our statehood committees. This committee is going to make the case for why DC statehood is actually good for business and necessary for a growing and resilient DC. And I'm very pleased that our former mayor, Anthony Williams, has pledged to be a part of this committee. And we thank Mayor Williams for his leadership and welcome his continued participation in this effort. The Communications Committee was going to handle press outreach and oversee the statehood.gov website, and we also expect them to be able to use the exciting new social media and other electronic means to really get our word out. You know, the Constitutional Convention that helped found our national republic relied on technology that involved quill pens. And even back in 1982, a lot of the documents that we used at that time were used on typewriters. This is the first Constitutional Convention of the 21st century, and we intend to use every modern resource at our disposal to help get the word out. So, all of you with communication skills, we want to make sure that we get you engaged in working on the Communications Committee Working Group. And finally, 2 national nominating conventions. Not just the national media, but the attention of the world will be focused on Cleveland and Philadelphia this summer. This committee, the Cleveland-Philadelphia Convention Working Group Committee, is going to generate ideas and create plans that will be used to build awareness of our disenfranchisement at these national political conventions. And while that's always been a part of our activities at the Democratic National Convention in recent years, we are not going to ignore the activities in Cleveland. So if you have some ideas on how we can help develop strategies to bring convention delegates from both parties into the fold, we want to hear about them. We have an aggressive timeline of district-wide events. We are kicking them off tonight, but beginning May 16th to the 19th, those working group organizational meetings are going to be taking place. When specifically will each group meet? That's going to be up to you who are going to compose our working groups. But we have reserved rooms in the Wilson building so that we can get going and move this process along. There will be a public engagement meeting that the commission would hold to address issues and engaging the public on our draft constitution. On June 9th, the commission will receive testimony and presentations from our working groups. We have a constitution that right now is scheduled for June 17th and 18th. We're looking to make sure that that's inclusive as possible. And then finally, on June 24th, we will meet and approve the final version of the Constitution and legislation that will approve the referendum that will need to be sent to the Council of the District of Columbia for approval and inclusion and adoption on the November ballot. We also want to engage town hall meetings in every ward of the city. So if you're in Ward 1, that's scheduled for June 7th, Ward 2, June 6th, Ward 3, May 31st, Ward 4, June 8th, Ward 5, June 2nd, Ward 6, June 1st, and Ward 7 and 8 at different times on the 4th of June. Any resident can always submit public comments at statehood.dc.gov. Other important dates. By June 30th, we're going to submit our resolution to the Council of the District of Columbia. By July 8th, that referendum needs to be filed with the DC Board of Elections. By September 15th, the Board of Elections will need to certify that referendum language. November 8th, Election Day here in the District of Columbia, where in addition to voting for president and all of the other offices, we will be voting on our referendum to become the 51st state. And on January 21st, the new president is going to be sworn in, and one of the first things that they're going to get on their desk is our petition for statehood. I heard somebody wanting to applaud there. Come on, I think that's... darn right. All right, so we need you to get involved. One, you're here. That's a great first step. For those of you that may not be here but are watching at home, the website is statehood.dc.gov. You can submit comments on the draft constitution anytime, day or night, 24 hours. There'll be details on upcoming events. We encourage you to share this information with any way you can on social media, at your ANC, civic association meetings, and on your community listservs. So, we come now to our public comment and question and answer period. And we thank you all for coming out. We want to hear from you. But before you speak, we want you to wait for the microphone so that not only can we hear you here in the room, but anybody watching on cable and streaming media will also be able to hear you. I see Anise Jenkins has gotten up and they're about to pass her the mic, so we're going to recognize you for our first comment.
Yes, my name is Anise Jenkins, Stand Up for Democracy in DC, Free DC, that we've been in existence for almost 20 years. Next year will be our 20th anniversary. I don't know if people know this, but each one of you are volunteers. You are unpaid. You have no vote, but we love you and we admire what you're doing. And thank you. I want to know what is in the budget for, I went to North Carolina 4 years ago with the organization, great Jerry Clark and all, but we don't want this to be an elitist movement. We want people to get involved who might not have the money, who can afford to go, and that's including me. Is there any money in the budget to help people to go to the conventions and be able to participate on the level that will be needed? And money, I believe, will also, and I'm not talking about salaries, I'm just talking about expenses, things like that. Is there a budget for these activities?
Well, I think the plan right now is to use the advocacy committee and get involvement from the business community to help fund some things. The commission itself does have a modest budget. The delegation itself does have a modest budget. And we have to look towards how to best use that effectively. One of the great things about having this convention in Philadelphia, unlike some of the conventions that have been farther away, is that it is not too long a drive. And it's the kind of place that you could get to with a short bus, and there's Amtrak, and it may even be possible to have people go up in the morning and come back the same day. So we're going to be looking at that, but I don't have a specific answer to your question yet.
Well, I'd like to add to that, please. Yeah, there is no budget at this point, and it's a serious mistake, in my opinion. I've worked on many national campaigns, including 4 presidential campaigns. And this is a really truncated time period. I've been working on things in Philadelphia. Many of the venues are already gone. We have to get this done quickly. There is no budget, and there needs to be a budget. And I wish Anise Jenkins, as much as I love you, you will show up for the next meeting and say that when the mayor and the chairman are here, because they're the people that control the budget. But yeah, we need a budget. We have no budget.
Greetings, my name is Harold Hunter. I'm from Ward 4. I'm interested in working on your education committee. I just want to commend the panel for doing extraordinary work for statehood. I have 3 questions. One is in reference to the wording. I know we're going to tackle that, but I want to address it. And frankly, I see the word statehood, so I just want to know, in the language, are we going to specify DC statehood? Because it can be ambiguous for some of the Israeli and Palestinian people when you see that word statehood. And the second question I have is in reference to the 3 elements that are composed to make a state, and that is land, revenue, and population. Land, revenue, and population. Thank you.
Okay. The new Columbia Statehood Commission is very much going to emphasize that we are focused on statehood for the District of Columbia. We know that there are other parts of the United States that are exploring the issue of statehood, and we know that there are other territories around the world that are interested in statehood. But I think we're going to work very hard to make clear what this referendum is about, and that we are focusing on statehood for the residents of the United States capital who are denied the equal rights that their fellow citizens are.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm Thomas Smith from Ward 8, a long-term, lifetime resident here, and I've worked with a number of you over the years. I think it should be made clear to some of the new residents here and some of the younger people that the DC statehood effort was started back when we first had our first mayor, Mayor Washington, and in fact it started a party, a political party called the DC Statehood Party, which is a non-corporate party. So I think it should be made clear that we're standing on the shoulders of giants already. Now, more to the point, you're the city council, and as Anise pointed out, there's no, as you said, there's no budget. Take 1 year's worth of, I don't know, the traffic parking tickets money and make it for this effort. Simple thing, because I understand that we get like $1 million a year. So I'll let someone else talk now. And by the way, I think we should also make an effort to contact the Green Party's National Convention also, because the Green Party has had DC statehood as a platform since 1972, I think. Thank you.
You know, thank you very much. We know that the Green Party and the DC Statehood Green Party is solid with us on this issue, and so I don't think we meant to slight them. They're not the problem. The problem is our folks we're going to be meeting in Cleveland, and to some extent, but a lesser extent, some of our folks that may be meeting in Philadelphia. But you're right, we are standing on the backs of many, many great leaders of this movement. And in particular, I'm not unmindful that some of the original delegates to the Constitutional Convention who've done great work, we intend to honor them in this process and build on what they've started. Many of the language of this draft convention is based on what was written in 1982 and revised in 1987. So we understand that we are a link in a long chain of activists, and we hope to move this process forward in a way that will justify their efforts and bring about the results that, regrettably, we all working together have yet to achieve. In terms of the budget and resources, let me just say we want to make sure this effort is well funded, but I do want to point out that I want to thank this mayor for her leadership. It is really only under Mayor Bowser that the commission and the delegation itself has had any budget at all, even if it's not necessarily as big as we would like. For the first time, we have paid staff. For the first time, we have functioning office equipment. So these do seem like baby steps, and we have a longer way to go. But it's great to be working with an administration that is taking statehood seriously and helping the commission and helping this delegation in ways that previous administrations have not.
I'd also like to add that I think that's just a beautiful idea to use the parking ticket money, because most of those parking tickets go to people that live in Maryland and Virginia, and it would be wonderful if they were financing our movement.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Prestige. I'm from Virginia, but I'm in the border of DC, Maryland, and Virginia, right in the middle. So I can't say which was, but I graduated Gallaudet University. What I want to see is the amendment with people with disability. I hope that's included in the Constitution in the 51 states. So I'm hoping to see that. My question I have is, during the video online, will they provide interpreters so I can watch the meeting, or will it be closed captioned so I can keep being involved in this commission?
Thank you very much for your question. All of our meetings do have sign language interpreters, and it's my understanding that on Channel 16 that those broadcasts are closed captioned as well. We are going to do our very best to make sure that every meeting of this commission, the convention, our working groups are in 100% accessible environments, and that the participation of everyone is welcome and included. And I'm glad you reminded me to thank the good people here at Gallaudet University who are our hosts tonight. We appreciate them making this facility available. They're a wonderful part of our community, and this is just a wonderful example of how they work so well and contribute well beyond their own campus activities and are a real part of the District of Columbia community. So thank you, Gallaudet.
Hello, my name is Guy Durant, and I live in Ward 5. I'm a native Washingtonian. And first, I just want to say I love you guys, and I'm so proud of the work that you're doing on statehood, and I appreciate the seriousness with which we are addressing the statehood issue. I just wanted to state a few facts and then ask my question. A few facts about statehood is that Washington, D.C.'s population is larger than the population of Vermont and Wyoming, yet in this constitutional draft that I've been reading, the number of legislators is much, 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 much less than those states. In fact, any other state. The smallest legislature in the United States is only 20. The average is actually 39. And Vermont and Wyoming, which I'm comparing our population to, has 30 each in their Senate and 150 in the Vermont bicameral representative legislature and 60 in the Wyoming. So they have a total of 180 legislatures in Vermont for a population of 625,741, with a ratio of about 20,858 representatives to their per senator, and 4,172 per representative on the House side. And so what I'm saying is, What I'm saying is that my question is, because there's only 13 and our ratio will be so much larger, we're not getting the kind of representative government we're getting, and we also need to be bicameral, because bicameral allows us to have two voting bodies. My suggestion, I have some flyers here I can pass out later to whoever wants it that shows the statistics, but would allow our ANCs to have a vote. Our ANCs have been without a vote for a long time. And so I just want to go over some of the statistics, because if we add the 40, for example, ANC chairs, that would only give us 53, and I think 53 is a manageable number, but that would still be less than Wyoming and Vermont, which our population is comparable to. So my question is, how can we get to a bicameral legislature, and how can we increase the number of legislators so that we don't have a status quo, but we have a revolution rather than an evolution?
Thank you for your question, Guy. Let me just say, right now, the District of Columbia's problem is not that we have too few legislatures, but we have too many. In addition to the members of our DC Council, we have 535 extra superfluous legislatures, none of whom live here, none of whom are committed to our interests, and who for the past 200 years have denied us our federal equal representation, our voting rights, and our self-determination. And so the most important thing we can do is to get rid of these 535 non-resident state legislators, city council members, wannabe mayors, and get them out of our business. And so that is the primary goal of statehood. That is the primary goal of this movement. And obviously, the draft constitution that is submitted for public comment is a draft constitution. It is submitted for public comment. That's why we are having these meetings. That's why we are having these public engagement sessions. But we do know that what we want is a constitution that will be a vehicle that moves us forward, that gets rid of those 535 elected officials that we don't want. And then as a state, we, as the people of the District of Columbia, if there's something in this Constitution that we don't like, it can always be amended. But right now, it cannot be amended unless we have the approval of these extra 535 superfluous wannabe state legislators, pretend city council members, people who like to play mayor for a day. They are the ones that we need to get rid of. So the goal of this is to get Congress out of our business, become a state, and then we can, so long as it's consistent with a Republican form of government or a representative democracy, establish as many chambers, have as many elected officials as we want. I will say that you mentioned ANC commissioners. Right now, ANC commissioners are a statutory office. That is, they exist because there's a law that says they exist. This Constitution will elevate ANC commissioners to a constitutional office and give them the protections of being a constitutional office. We have a State Board of Education that is a statutory office. This will make the State Board of Education a constitutional office. So no longer can these other elected officials be abolished by one branch of the government. You would actually need to amend the Constitution, and they would have that additional protection. But we know that there are differing views on that, and that's what we want to hear when it comes to this convention. Let's take 3 more questions, but what we really want to do is get to the working groups.
I want to make a comment. Mr. Duran, I want you to know, first of all, that you're not alone. This comment comes up time and time again, and that's why I'd like to make a working group so that we can resolve some of these things. New Hampshire has half the budget of the District of Columbia. They have 434 legislators. So, I mean, this is not insignificant. I don't disagree with anything that Senator Strauss says, and we can amend the process. But I'd like to see us get some of these things straight before we come up with a final constitution. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jennifer Goodwin. I'm a native Washingtonian in Ward 8. My question is regarding the DC appropriation budget that's been handled by the Congress for a long, long time. My question is, if DC is becoming a state, how will you guys handle the budget?
Once we become a state, we will handle the budget the same way every other state does, by ourselves and without the interference of the Congress, who sometimes does such a bad job of handling the national budget that the entire government shuts down, including the District of Columbia. So I don't mean to oversimplify it, but a heck of a lot better than it's been handled in the past, and with a process that involves those of us here in the District of Columbia, or hopefully the state of New Columbia only. We'll take 2 more, and then we really want to get to the public engagement groups.
Hi, I'm Hector Rodriguez, Latinos for DC Statehood. I've been involved in this movement since my hair was black. Some people don't believe it. They think I've never had black hair. Nevertheless, I want to get back to the money, honey. You know, we've got about 700,000 citizens. If we could invest $1 for our freedom, that's $700,000 to that budget. And if we could invest $2 for every citizen in the District of Columbia, that's $1,400,000 for our movement. So let's keep an eye on the prize here. We need resources, and we got to keep fighting for that. Thank you.
Natalia Strakuzian from Ward 8. I'd like to bring up some points of reference. I think that we should look at it as a house-only system. By doing so, we have still good representation, and we're not overburdening the taxpayer in big payroll in that manner. But then when we look at it realistically, when you look at neighborhoods, those zones, or those voting districts by the house only will have representation based on the population, and that's the way it should be run to begin with. And when it comes to the District of Columbia, New Columbia, I think it should be called Washington, D.C., our 51st state. The way I look at it is like Italy. You have the Vatican in the heart of Italy, which is its own sovereign nation, right? And then you have Rome, the capital. And I see the District of Columbia as our federal enclave. And that's where I see the government is. Everything outside of that is Washington, D.C., our 51st state. And with the government, when we do become our 51st state, we get the governor to have a referendum to change the name, or executive order, I'm sorry, to change the name to the Washington, D.C., our 51st state. That way it doesn't mess up maps and it keeps our city what it is, because we are Washington, D.C., and we should be our 51st state. And I think in some ways we're rushing this a little bit too fast to put this all together, because, I mean, this is a time-consuming process, and it shouldn't be rushed into, because the mistakes get made when you rush into some type of a big catastrophic scenario that we're putting in right now.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comment. Let me just say that I think the biggest mistake we can make is if we are presented with the historic opportunity that we think we might, with a new president, a new Senate, and possibly dramatic change in the House of Representatives, and we are not ready, that will have been the biggest mistake we can make. It is an ambitious process. We are moving quickly, but that's why we are out here as often as we are, engaging the public as frequently as we have. We have spent 200 years in this process, and we don't want to wait any longer. One last question, and then we're going to the working groups. Okay. I just...
Is this working? Can you hear me? Okay, good. I'm G. Lee Aiken. I am from the DC Statehood Green Party. Perhaps I should go to Cleveland since I'm not the enemy. And I'm also running for at-large city council in the primary. Several questions that I was going to ask have already been answered. Denise Jenkins about helping people go to the poll, go to the conventions. One thing that was not mentioned in the All-America Working Group is we're in an international city, and we're basically the only major capital that does not have its own government. And why are we not also going to include getting some lobbying assistance from the international community? We are so well fixed to be able to do that. And in a related question, I know nobody has mentioned Puerto Rico, but my son and his wife and my grandchildren live there, and I'm wondering what we might in the future be doing to help Puerto Rico do what we're trying to do.
You've raised a couple of points I want to respond to them really quickly. One, we are engaging the international community, and in fact, the District of Columbia was admitted to the UNPO, the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization. They are involved in this process, and in fact, one of the things that the UNPO does as the international community is they send election observers around the world to make sure that referendums like this by places seeking statehood are done freely and fairly, and I suspect that they will be playing that kind of role in our process, and we expect to be relying heavily on them, but there's a lot we have to do to get this referendum to the ballot and the president domestically, and I think that's where our focus is going to be now. The Commonwealth of Puerto Rico did have a vote where they rejected their current status, but they do not have the kind of consensus that we do here yet. I understand from people in the statehood movement in Puerto Rico that following their next election, watching us closely, they may decide to do something similar. And you may see a Tennessee plan being followed by the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. But my job is to make sure that the District of Columbia gets statehood. We deserve it. We want to be the 51st state. And if they want to be 52, that's fine. But we would like to beat them. I know we really want to get to these working groups. So we're going to take these last two questions. And then this is not the end. We're not cutting off debate. We've got a lot of work to do. This is going to be discussion. So we're not adjourning the meeting. We want to break you up and start putting the action plan in place. We're assuming that everybody here agrees that statehood is a worthy goal. So let's figure out how to get there. Nick?
Hello, Nicholas Schiller, Ward 1. I was one of the authors of Initiative 71, and my comment about the current draft is that it prevents the appropriation of money, and one of the concerns with 71 is that it's an incomplete ballot initiative, so hope going forward we can actually have a direct democracy that allows our ballot initiatives to appropriate money. My question actually is concerning the referendum, if it makes way to the ballot. Will it have 4 questions on it? And why 4 questions? Why not just one question, yes or no?
The referendum will be one question, but it will have 4 parts, and the reason it needs the 4 parts is because that's the constitutional requirements for statehood. So we are trying to do all of the 4 things that need to be done with one ballot initiative. And as for comments on the language of the Constitution, that's why we're having this constitutional convention. So we know there's going to be a diversity of opinion. That's why we want it inclusive. That's why we want to hear from you. And obviously, keeping the initiative and referendum process is an important protection for people. And I know we're all going to want to see that as well. One last question.
Nick, I just want to add to that it concerns me too. It was part of the confusion on the ballot in Puerto Rico. I'm also not sure that we can change the word Republican to representative. I'm not a lawyer. Senator Strauss is probably better, could better answer that question. But I think it's a problem. And this is why I want a constitutional working group, so that we can work these things out before we get there and we're all on the same page.
Hi, I'm Tabu Henry Taylor, and I'd like for you to address for us the constitutional experts that you mentioned that's advising the process. Tell us a little bit about how many, who they are, what makes them experts, and how do we access them if and when we need them? Who has access to them?
The constitutional experts, probably the most prominent of them is Viet Din, who is actually a prominent Republican constitutional scholar who testified on the statehood bill when Senator Carper had his hearing, and is one of the leading Republicans to articulate very effectively why statehood is 100% constitutional, as well as all of the other policy papers. Some of the other lawyers on the committee included deans and academics from our area law schools, Shelley Broderick from the University of District of Columbia, lawyers from Georgetown, George Washington, many too numerous to name, but it was a lot of legal talent, and their job was to come up with the draft constitution as a starting point. But under this process, every citizen of the District of Columbia gets to be a delegate to this constitutional convention. It will be the most inclusive, most expansive constitutional convention that has ever taken place. And because it's the first one in the 21st century, you don't even need to physically be present in the room to have your participation included. You can do it online, electronically, through Skype and a variety of other digital platforms. But I hope that answers your question. And I know...
Will we have access to them during this process is what I'm really getting at. If we have questions we want to ask them, will we, the participants, be able to question them?
I think there will be a way, yeah. I don't know that we can allow every resident to call every one of these scholars anytime, day or night. But we will be working with the folks from the legal committee to come up with a process to do that. But I could tell you probably the best way to access them now is to start using the online comments so we can begin to collect those and maybe get some response would be my suggestion. Let me recognize the mayor's senior advisor, Beverly Perry, who convened a lot of those experts.
Yes, and let me just say, we talked about this earlier. We think that it would probably be a great idea to have at least 2 or 3 of the lawyers at all of the round tables in the ward. So I'm going to convene them next week and see if we can make those assignments and have some of those professors at all of the, throughout the wards. We have representatives from all the law schools in town, except we don't have an AU professor or a Catholic yet. And so, we do have Howard. We have Fred Cook, who drafted the '87 Constitution, and he's a professor at Howard.
You know, I'd just like to say again, Taboo, this is what concerns me, because we're taking a document that was originally drafted by 45 people, and now we're going to have 675,000 delegates, and we're taking a process that took 2.5 years, and we're putting it in a day and a half. So I think you're right.
If I, may I?
All right, that's going to conclude this portion of the meeting. Representative Garcia, closing remarks?
If I may just say real quick, for your information, a lot of the questions that you had tonight and a lot more that have been unanswered can be found on video. We tape all these sessions. And so if you go to statehood.dc.gov, a lot of if you go ahead and look at the video, the YouTube videos are online, you can probably get a lot of questions. And also there's a list of all the scholars on that website also. Just wanted to say that.
All right, and this is just the end of the commission meeting. This is where the rubber meets the road here. We want to start these working groups. So, Mr. Kindle, which group is going to be meeting where?
All right, let's see. Let's see if this mic. All right, we have 5 working groups. At each corner of this room, there is a sign right here. This is Cleveland, Philadelphia. Councilmember Anita Bonds will be facilitating that committee. And around the room, there are a number of signs. Please visit one of those stations. We're due probably to get out of here probably by 8:30, I think. The goal is to collect your ideas, and then we're going to move forward to the next process, which means meetings over the next couple of weeks where we sharpen and fashion ideas that you've presented tonight. All right? If you have any questions, just see me. But right now, we'll break, and thank you, gentlemen, for this session. So all Americans for Statehood are right here. In the back, Steve, if you could raise your hand, all 8 wards.